reenact that. I would like to call the Lane County Budget Committee Thursday, May 14th, 2015, 2 p.m. I'd like to call it to order. And the first item is committee business, and I would like to start with a couple of comments. Just so people know where I'm coming from as chair and my thoughts, having been on the budget committee for 11 years, is I really want to strike a balance in participation between the citizen members and the commissioner members. I'd like to do everything I can to see that we have a smooth process, that we have a thoughtful process, that people are given time to process their thoughts, ask questions, and so on. I'd like to start today and certainly for next Thursday, make sure that we go around the room. I'd like everybody to be offered an opportunity to ask one question. And then when we move on, we'll go in a clockwise order. If you don't have a question, feel free to pass. But I do feel that there is a difference between asking a question when the speaker or the person with the answer is right here as opposed to the cards. The cards are an excellent system. They allow for a more thoughtful time put into the answer situation for staff, allow them to do the research and that sort of thing. So there is value to the cards, but there is value to asking a question at the time. So with that said, also that my objective, I believe as chair, is to honor the agenda. If there are additions or deletions to the agenda, we should certainly bring that up in the beginning. But once we get rolling, the agenda is my marching order, so that we stick to that. So, having said that, anybody in the group wish to weigh in on process or anything in that regard? Commissioner Sorensen? Sorry.
Well, I think one of the real challenges that we have is that the way the budget process is set up, it's set up to have kind of a Tuesday, Thursday, 3 hours, and the time is virtually all taken up by the presentation. So it's designed, and maybe that's intentional, but it's designed to actually, minimize questions from the budget committee members. And, if there's an interest on changing that, I would be certainly open to it. But I am, I guess, somewhat resigned to the fact that that's the way the people running the process want it to be. But I will just voice a bit of an objection to it, if you want to know my feelings, that by giving the agencies 3/4 of the time, giving us 1/4 of the time, you're sending the message that really what you want to do is hear staff tell us what they're doing, tell us how they do it, and there's minimal in discussion of the actual dollars involved. And then when committee members ask questions, because of the timeline set up, you basically tell us put it on the cards, and the information is eventually provided. But there isn't really a whole lot of discussion by the budget committee. And if you look at the other budget committees, at least the other ones that I've been on, there's been a range of division of time between the presentation and the committee members asking questions. And also, the commissioners are used to asking lots of questions, and we have a much longer period of time typically in our meetings to ask questions. And so you're right, the commissioners tend to dominate the committee, and that further heightens the problem for the citizen members.
Okay. Thank you. And I personally agree with that, so I'd appreciate, as we go around, comments relating to the time allocation.
Apologies for being a few minutes late, and I didn't get the whole run-up to the conversation, but I think I can jump in like jump rope and catch up. And I appreciate Commissioner Sorensen's comments, and I would just say as a citizen member and as someone who's not as familiar with and doesn't take as much time with the programs and with everything that's going on. I really appreciate the time that's spent on the program, and I would hate for it to be shortchanged so that we can have more conversation. I'd really like to see both, because I think the budget, the purpose of a budget is not the end itself, it's a tool. And if we don't understand the programs and the services being delivered and the impact on community, the budget is irrelevant, really. So we need to understand the programs and the services we've delivered and how it's impacting community, and have some conversation about that to comment on the budget. We're not here just for the sake of the budget. We're here for the sake of the services that are delivered using the tool of a budget and the resources that it reflects. And they're not the only resources. And we hear about resources that aren't reflected on spreadsheets and in this document from the staff. So I really appreciate the presentations and the time, and it gives us a lot to think about. I'd hate to shortchange it, but I also really hate to shortchange our opportunity to have a conversation. And what we also don't get is time to come back. I know I'm probably not the only one who's sort of a muller. So we hear this information, and then we kind of pack it all in and have our questions, and that's sort of over. And there's no chance to come back or to integrate all these different departments and services and considerations into the one document, which we do look at as a whole. So anything we can consider that can bring all that to bear would be greatly appreciated from my perspective.
Commissioner?
Right around. Well, I spent 10 years doing the City of Eugene budgets, and that could be like doing the dentist chair without Novocaine sometimes. Because of the amount of time taken up by the budget committee members asking questions that really didn't need answers then, or asking questions that were more hypothetical, sort of asking staff members to go into, and well, I hadn't really thought about that, but let me take a stab at it. If you can avoid that kind of question, I think that's the balance that Lori's asking for, and have substantive discussions about belaboring any one particular issue.
I'd probably echo on with Commissioner Swinson and Lori on that. Just from my limited time here, some of the most intriguing and important information I felt came from the question and answers between the budget committee members and the presenters, so I'd like to see a little bit more of that.
Commissioner Lepton?
Well, a lot of my experience came from the Springfield Budget Committee. And of course, when I walked in, all of a sudden we were adopting the budget. So it usually go pretty quickly. But I would agree that I think a lot of I think you get good information from Q&A.
Okay.
So maybe just a little bit more of a balance there. Besides, I'd like to hear Shanna's questions. Financial guru. Actually, I really do. All of a sudden, I'm thinking, doggone it, how did I miss that one? So I do appreciate that.
Okay.
I agree. I think there's value in dialogue. And to piggyback on what Lori said, too, after some of the presentations on Tuesday, I was thinking, I wish I would have asked that additional question, and then it doesn't seem like there's an opportunity. So I do like a little bit of the dialogue, but not to have it go on incessantly.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll find a good balance for it.
I much agree with the comments that I want to make sure that the folks that are here are getting the information that they need. I think our staff's doing a great job making the presentations. They're very good. This is my 11th budget, so I have a pretty good grasp on everything we've gone with. We have a new administrator that's making some proposed changes. I think they've been well presented to us. I do not want our folks that are members not get their answers asked, and I want to make sure that even if it was a night later, that you have the ability to shoot an email to Christine and the budget staff to get questions answered. Because we need to make the best informed recommendation to the Board of Commissioners as possible. So I appreciate the fact that you would like to give everybody the opportunity with the chair as a meeting to ask you questions, and I think that time can be allocated. So.
I think, personally, I get a lot from other people asking questions and hearing the responses to those. And I do appreciate the fact that the commissioners have spent a lot more time in these matters than I have. And I do encourage, even the questions, if you want to ask a question you already know an answer to, I don't have any problem with that. If it's in context and it helps set up a better understanding of the presentation, I think that's a valid question. The commissioners are a resource for me personally in this meeting.
So, I do think it's important that people get their questions answered, and, there's the opportunity to ask it in the moment you're in the meeting, there's the opportunity to place it on a card, there's the opportunity at any time to email a question in to Christine, and she can distribute the proper staff to get back in one of the written formats in the next meeting to everybody hear the question and get the same answer. I will note that this meeting's got 45 minutes at the end of it for committee business because, it was scheduled that way. We put a calendar out at the very beginning that everybody got to see. They understood that there was going to be a fair amount of presentation, and then there's 45 minutes today for us to talk and discuss and ask a lot of detailed questions. And then our next meeting on the 21st got 2 hours and 15 minutes of discussion and deliberation scheduled. So it's not like we're solid presentation. This is the third budget, or fourth, I can't remember, I'm trying to think, PAXA, LRAPA, I'm working on PSCC right now, so I guess it's the fourth budget this year I'm working on. And in every one of those agencies, there was at least some presentation by staff of the proposed budget so that the budget committee could understand that budget, and then it was opened up to questions a lot of times. And so that's pretty standard practice. And yes, because the board, I am involved in 3 other agencies' budgets, I have a lot of crossover questions because the budget for those agencies comes out of other agencies. Actually, I forgot one. HSC has also got a budget, too. So it's those sort of things. So I would expect that, and I'm sitting on different committees and boards than the other board members are. So they have different crossovers, different questions. So I would expect that sometimes you are going to see more detailed questions from board members that have those crossovers. I always would like to defer to a citizen member if they do have a question first. But I think we will have time, and at any time, if you're a mulled over person and I do the same thing, I'll wake up at 5 in the morning with a question. As some of the staff has noted the timestamps on my emails. It's a quick email and jot it out before you forget it, and then you can go back to sleep. It is great, so take advantage of that. There's so many different ways to get a question in staff to get answered.
Can I just clarify a comment? I think that Christine's team is outstanding and have done a great job. It's not like I've asked a question that hasn't been answered. It was that I wish I would have said something to the speaker, but I just wanted to clarify. It's not that you didn't respond. You've been fantastic.
Okay. Steve, Christine, do you want to weigh in on the conversation?
I think it's great feedback. I'm asking opinion. I personally agree with the comments, and I think I'm glad to get the opportunity for people to provide that feedback. Christine and I talked just for a second about some things we can do going forward. We can correct, the prior meetings, of course, but going forward, what we can do is identify time for presentations and then time for questions. What we've done is sort of allocate, here's the time for a presentation, and we've asked folks to try and wrap up early for questions, but if we actually dedicate that on the agenda, we'll make it clear. I will raise my hand and say that on Tuesday we jammed your meeting. We did that. We didn't intentionally jam it together, but as I said at the end of that meeting, we wanted all of those service areas to present in the same day so that the committee had an understanding and appreciation for the integrated nature of services between public safety and health and human services. So that was clearly an impact of having all of those presentations on that day, was that you were left with less time to ask questions. So we'll contemplate in the future how to manage that better, whether we extend an hour, we start an hour earlier, extend an hour later, or we do something else to make sure that we have appropriate time to ask questions. So thank you for that.
Okay. Go ahead.
One last thing I'll just say to piggyback on my own comments. 2 points. One is as a citizen member, I've already committed the hours to be on the committee, and I'd rather spend a little more time and have a more robust, and, the process with a little more integrity and time. So what's a little more time once there's this much time devoted? So I'll just say that. I appreciate probably sensitivity to volunteers spending time. Once I'm committing this many hours, another cumulative hour or two in the course of the month. There it is. So done the process. That's for me. I can speak to the other members. The other is that there's a value in the iterative nature of time for questions. So if it's just one directional, it's just me putting a question to Christine or the staff or the presenters and getting a response back, that's one thing, and that can be done on cards and emails. But I think the value of a group around the table is the conversation. So if I just have a question that I want to ask, yeah, I can do that anytime by email. But that's what also happens when the time is limited, is you don't get that iterative. Somebody asks a question, whether it's staff or another committee member answers it or has a comment, and that cumulative, that's what we're here as a committee for, is that cumulative knowledge and response and information and perspective on, as I said, what the services that are being delivered using the budget just as a tool, not the budget itself.
Okay. Well, having heard the discussion, I would pose the question, do people feel, is there a consensus that we need to add more time to this budget session within the constraints of proper notice and so on and so forth, but we only have one final meeting scheduled for next week? Are people feeling angst that we want to schedule perhaps Tuesday night for more time? Just by show of hands, do we need more time this budget session? Okay. Then we'll incorporate the ideas into next year. Am I seeing nods? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
It is essential that the non-commissioner members have as much say as they can. So when I was on the City of Eugene Budget Committee, I always implored councilors to let the non-council members ask more questions. We have plenty of other venues to forward the questions.
Okay, and I plan to address that partially by going around the table, and everybody has an equal opportunity. But I think the citizen members all agree that this is something that commissioners live with 365 days a year, and multiple committees and multiple budget discussions. So that the energy and time that they put in, I think, is well respected also. So, but starting today, we'll go around the table for questions. And everybody gets one or a pass, and if there's time, we go to the second opportunity. Okay? The other thing I've forgotten is staff time. I believe we've had rules in the past that if it took staff more than 20 minutes to respond to a question, that question came before the committee, and there was the four in agreement of that question before we asked a great deal from staff. Do we need to revisit that, or are you okay with it?
I think we're okay with the question, yeah.
Okay. Then, is there any other committee business? We do have time at the end, but do we? Yes. I was going to hold off on it, but that's okay.
What would you like to?
Well, I've read them, other than a terrible misspelling. I'm happy to listen.
Adjourn has a U, by the way.
Pardon me?
Adjourn, the word adjourn has a U.
I didn't know there was, I won't say the spelling, but I tried to have a little fun with it.
Thank you very much.
I'll give everybody 1 minute to read them.
In case I want to highlight.
Yes. Okay, looks like we're going back into the binders. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Lane County Budget Committee of Tuesday, May 12th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Thank you. Okay, anything else before we go into general expense? Then let's spend some money.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the Budget Committee. So I will begin here with talking about general expense, which you will find in your budget document, page 59, is where that section starts. And those of you who have been on the committee before know that general expense is a consolidation of many non-departmental mandated and essential payments and services that cannot be allocated to an individual department. So here you're going to find things like our debt service payments, general fund reserve, the property taxes come into general expense, risk and benefits fund, special services and projects, our Title III fund, and tourism. So I'll visit through each of these topics as we go through. So linked to strategic plan, while there are no services being provided out of general expense directly, so I don't have one of those one-pagers for you for general expense, I did want to bring in this symbol here that you've seen on many of those strategic plan one-pagers. So this is the ongoing element in the strategic plan that we use. That's a diagram that's supposed to be a symbol of our 3 strategic priorities, incorporating the economic stability growth that we achieve in each priority area. So just kind of explaining what that symbol means that you've seen there. And I'm sorry, I didn't print out my PowerPoint, so I'm sorry you're looking at the screen. All right, so debt service. Debt service payments, I show you here a graph that shows the legal limit that the county could hold of debt, and then what we do hold. So the legal limit is that red bar, and then blue represents the debt that we currently have. Total outstanding principal is about $90 million countywide. The vast majority of that being our pension bond, PERS bond, which you've probably heard us refer to. And the debt service payments in 15-16 are going to amount to about $10.4 million, 6.4 of that being that pension bond. And the next page, covering a little bit on the debt payoff. We do have a financial policy in Lane Manual that talks about the use of one-time revenues. And so this Lane Manual is adopted by the Board of Commissioners. So one of their policies is that to the extent feasible, we want to use one-time revenues to pay off one-time expenses, such as capital expenditures. This debt that we're proposing to be paid off is from capital expenditures, it's the building of buildings. So that is why that is being proposed. And I did hand out an answer to a question at the last meeting that gave you more detail on the bonds that are being paid off, the interest saved. This is just a very high-level summary here. The proposal is for $5.3 million in the road fund to be used to pay off the customer service center bond, the piece that's callable. That'll save us about $700,000 in interest. And then in the general fund, about $4 million to pay off the heirs bond and the state court debt, which will save us about $363,000. So questions at the end if you have more on the debt, we'll be glad to answer those. So the general fund piece of general expense, as I mentioned, it collects the property tax revenue, also some state shared revenues that we receive that we can use for general purposes, such as liquor tax, car and rental, amusement taxes, and then our SRS timber payments also come into general expense. Those revenues make up what we refer to as our discretionary general fund. So that is what departments, including many that you'll hear from today, use a piece of discretionary general fund, a piece of this revenue to balance their budgets after whatever other revenue they're bringing in. There's also limited expenses in general expense, again, things that really aren't attributed to one department. It does receive transfers in from departments to then make the debt service payments. So it has the debt service funds in there. We pay legal expenses for anything that we have to do for the general fund or even the budget as a whole when I have to publish those notices that this general expense pays for that. Then there are some dues, which I'm going to hand out a page here for you to show you what the dues for this year are proposed at. And our Metro TV, which records these meetings, is paid out of general expense instead of the county-wide expense. General fund also then, this is where the reserve is held. And it is at the 10% minimum in the 2016 proposed budget. I'll pass this around in case people want to see what the dues are and if you have questions.
So, Mr. Chair, while Kristen's passing that around, real quickly, so on the $1.27 rate that we receive, property tax rate, how much of that actually comes to the county general fund? Like, how many cents on the dollar?
Oh, it changes based on what other tax rates are doing, and I think it's gone just above the 9 cents. In the past, it was always 9 cents.
Above 9
I think
cents.
we're above 9 cents.
Okay, great.
But our assessor would actually be able to tell us that for sure, and he's presenting today.
That was
too.
my first hit, was 9 cents.
Yeah,
All
it was 9
within-
cents for a long time, but I think we might have.
If we go more, the levy.
We're going to be into two figures here soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, a little more on the reserve. We do have a financial policy that talks about the size of the general fund reserve. 5% of it is referred to as an emergency reserve. It also provides cash flow for us. As you know, property taxes, those statements don't go out until November. We don't start getting payments till then, so we've got from July until November to be paying expenses, and so we need some cash in the bank to make those payments. Then we have the other 5% is referred to as an economic stabilization reserve. And our financial policies talk about when that could be used. Some indicators that the board has indicated we should look at if we were going to dip below 10%, it should be very quick turnaround to replenish those funds when unemployment and the economy are in a certain state. And so there, again, I said 10%, which is about $7.4 million for 15-16 as the reserve. General expense also has the risk and benefit funds within it. Our risk fund holds the reserves for payment of both general liability and our workers' comp claims. You've heard a bit about that from County Council, who has the risk fund, how they're looking at the workers' comp claims, how we are self-insured. We have an actuarial look at that fund every 2 years to tell us where our reserve level should be. We're due for that this summer, so we'll be having another review of that. The reserve right now is about $3.6 million, which we believe is sufficient for the claims that we have outstanding, that they will verify that for us here in a couple months. We do purchase excess liability insurance, and that happened probably, I think it was about fiscal year 10-11, because of some tort limit claims that limits that changed at the legislature, so we felt like we should have some excess insurance. So we do also have that to cover those large claims. The benefits fund. This fund receives payments from all of our departments and services. So when you have an employee out in a department, we're going to bill through payroll for the health insurance, dental insurance, deferred comp, all the employer taxes, and that money's going to funnel into the benefit fund and then be paid out to whatever providers need it. So that benefit fund is fairly large, but those expenses are showing twice in the budget. They're out in the departments, and then this benefit fund receives them and then pays them out. More on the self-funding will happen when Human Resources presents to you. We might wrap up general expense a little early. We want to make sure we have plenty of time for those questions, but Mary Miller is going to provide more on what we're doing with health insurance. I know you've already heard some of it, but so PERS reserve, as you heard me mention the first night, we do have a slight PERS reserve. It's about $2.2 million. We had not lowered our rates back in 13-14 after the legislation because we were worried about the Supreme Court decision. So we did decide to collect some reserve just in case there was an overturning of it. So we will have that to minimize the impacts once we know them in a couple of years. And then we have a retiree benefit fund, which I know many of you are familiar with, a benefit that was granted to employees in the past. It is not granted to current employees or current hire employees. We do still have employees that are working that get this benefit, but they have employer-paid, employee-only health insurance. And so we do an actuarial every 2 years on this also to make sure our reserve is of the right size, and that fund holds those monies. And it has reached the point now where we're starting to pay out more than we're collecting. so we crossed over that bell and we're starting to go down.
The Medicare benefit for life.
Yes, until the Medicare, well, yeah, then we pay the Medicare, right. So the Special Services and Projects term covers several things. We have economic development, which is where the video lottery funds from the state are deposited. Some of those funds are used to fund our economic development staff here. We have just 2 FTE. That program is found within county administration. You'll hear more about that. And then there's a 50-50 split of the video lottery funds themselves by policy, that we won't do more than 50% within our general allocation programs and 50% to our economic development strategic investment projects. It can always be more than 50%, or at least last piece, but we watch to make sure that we're keeping that split as defined by our own policies. There is a movement towards more infrastructure for the strategic investment projects, which you will likely hear more about in county administration of that economic development. Courthouse facility security is another piece that is in the special projects area. This is the place where that state court fine debt that I referred to will be paid to into this court facility security fund. It's for the state courts that are here in this building. So 15-16 budget does propose to pay off that remaining debt. Then there are just court assessment fees that a percentage of it gets put into this fund and they use it for security for the courts. Capital projects. Juvenile Justice Center Construction Fund, we do still have just a little bit of money in that fund that was from the original bonds. By a little bit, I mean a few $100,000 that they're using to do projects out there on the campus, on that building. That was an allowable use for those funds. And then the county school funds, which you've probably heard about when we're talking about secure rural schools. A piece of that money, the National Forest money, is split between the road fund and the school fund. 25% of that money goes to the school fund, 75% to the road fund. And that money just passes through the county. So it appears on our budget in that fund, but we just put the whole thing out to the Lane Education Service District by the end of the year, and then they are the ones that send it out to Lane County schools. Title III is another piece of the Secure Rural Schools. So when it was recently renewed, this piece is also part of it. It has been, in the past, used for different things like our forest work camp. Unfortunately, that allowable use ended in 2008, which is why we no longer have the forest work camp. But we do still have some programs that are eligible for those funds. Right now, the land management uses the bulk of the new money, just because of how they're defining the uses. Our Firewise program is the main program that can use that. So they're spending about it should have a K after it, $450,000, not $450. That would be very. That program gives grants to local residents to help make their, it could be their landscaping, their siding on their house, their roof more fireproof in that urban, rural boundaries there if they're up against the timber. So it's a great program, and they just, most of the expense is grants out to the community. We also then have funding can be used for search and rescue and dunes patrol. Most of that funding for those two programs is some of the older Title III money that we have from prior acts. The newer money has different uses on it, different rules around it, so we cannot use it for that. But so going forward, we will have approximately $2 million left for Firewise. So depending on how large their program is each year, tells you how long, you might be able to make that last 3 or 4 years. And then we have about another $1 million. So we have a total of $3 million of 2 different sources of secure rural schools, different acts. Then we still have the 2000 money. We have $800,000 that can be used for that search and rescue and dunes patrol. So they'll be spending that down over the next couple of years. Transient room tax is also within general expense. Those funds are used by Travelling County, receives a large piece of that funding. Capital improvements, Lane Event Center also receives a large piece. They use some of it for operations and some of it for their debt service payments. Lane County Historical Museum, which is not a county program or department, but they receive part of that funding. Rural Tourism Program, Special Projects, which does grants to both city and rural applicants. And then Parks also receives a piece of the transient room tax. So transient room tax has actually been growing leaps and bounds the last 2 years. 14, 15 so far this year, we're 12% over where we were at this time last year. So that's been great. We still continue to know that can't last forever, so staying pretty conservative on our budget for next year at 3%. It may well continue to grow faster than that, which is great. But we can- so we just give it out to the same programs based on their percentages. So as that grows, they grow. And that is all. Unless any other questions.
Okay. Start with Commissioner Sorensen. Lori?
I'll pass this around.
No questions.
That's my facetious one earlier.
None at this time.
Okay. I'll go last.
Yeah, I don't have it.
So, on
Yes.
the dues handout, FY 12-13 for El Rapa shows a 0. We actually did in-kind services that year. So should that actually show a 0? Because there was actually, we had to have an expense to do the in-kind work. To
Not
see
really
if
from a
it's,
budget standpoint. Right. We would have to look
But it-
back. We could put a note
El
down
Rapa's
below,
budget
probably.
shows
Yeah.
the income.
In kind.
Yeah, so we had this discussion today at El Rapa's budget meeting because the city of Eugene is still doing part of their dues in kind. 25,000, in fact, of their dues is coming in kind.
We started then.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, that year, I think we started for a while.
Yeah.
We can definitely put a note, we attach this to the adopted
Okay.
order too, so I'll make a note down below.
All right, it just looks
For that
like
year.
for 1 year we didn't pay El Rapa,
Right.
which is not true.
It's not
True.
true.
Okay.
So,
In fact, I think you get more in kind than you would have in cash.
Is our fiscal year set in stone?
Yes.
And I noticed the payoff amounts, 5.3 million, gets saved us 712,000 a year, 4.4, and saves us 336,000. That's a substantial difference. So again, I ask, are we paying off the very most expensive debt across the county that we can?
Well, we've identified the debt that we can afford to pay off because it's so significant. The debt in the general fund, between the general fund and the road fund, the interest rates between the two largest portions are 3.7 to 4%. And I don't know if you have in front of you, if we've shared with you the savings, interest savings, once that debt is paid off. And I believe on the road fund, it's nearly $250,000, and in the general fund, it's over $300,000. So all told, it's over $1 million in interest savings between the general fund and the road fund once that debt is paid off. So we have looked at where do we get the most savings from interest payments as well as our available resources to pay off the debt paid off.
Okay.
I'll just add to that, some of our, whereas our first bond is more expensive, none of it is callable.
Right.
So we have paid off all of the callable portion that we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regarding the Association of ONC Counties membership dues, a couple questions. One is, looks like it's almost doubled from last year. What is the reason that it's doubling, almost doubling?
I think I'll actually defer that to Commissioner Stewart. He's on that board with the details.
Commissioner Thornton, you might remember a few years back when the association decided to give, there was a huge legal fund that was available, and they had met the sunset for that legal fund to give it back. Well, all but 2 counties chose to keep that fund in there to keep funding operations for ONC. 9 County took the money back, and then we chose to pay our yearly dues. Why this is double is because now it is a budget for everything that ONC does. We, as a county, we were not paying the lobby effort part of ONC, and so we chose not to pay about $30,000 a year towards the lobby effort, and the association didn't press Lane County to pay that money because they had reserves to pay it. Now the reserves are gone. Now they're asking us to pay that lobby fee that we really deferred for a couple of years. So that's why it's almost double, or more than double what it was.
And is Benton County still not paying money into ONC?
Yeah, Benton County is the only county that's not paying. They have had a presentation. They are considering, they've been asked to consider paying, but we haven't heard from them.
And then, Christine, maybe you can answer this about the allocation of the ONC money. We have taken money out of the road fund for the Association of Oregon Counties and the National Association of Counties. What's the rationale for taking all of the ONC member money out of the general fund and none out of the road fund?
The ONC money all goes into the general fund and always has. So it's the only fund that benefits more from that. The Secure Rural Schools money, where I mentioned the National Forest, is what pays the road fund and the county school fund. It's the BLM ONC lands that go directly into the general fund. So that's the split of seeing which funds benefit from which groups.
Okay, thank you.
Just a general question I'll ask you, and then, do we have a way of determining the dollars that come back to the county as a result of the expenses, dues, lobbyists that we pay, and associations that we're a part of? I mean, how much return are we getting for our investment in these different companies?
I don't know that we...
So if I could, especially on Smith, Dawson, and Andrews, what I can do is kind of give you an aggregate, so you can kind of give an idea of how much is put in, because Lane County puts money in, City of Springfield, Eugene, Lane Transit District, so all these groups put dollars into Smith, Dawson, Andrews. The last number I've heard were the investment coming back to Lane County, whether it be transportation money, water resource money, is about somewhere between $250 and $200 million. So I would say that Smith, Dawson, and Andrews has clearly been a very positive investment overall as part of the United Front. So I think so I can give, that's the aggregate, and that's how long I've been involved.
Okay.
But I believe that that's the number that's out there as far as when the United Front as a whole has been, because it started out, I think, just Lane County, I think, I can't remember who it was, but maybe Lane County, maybe the city of Eugene, I think, started with Smith, Smith, Dawson, and Andrews before too. So that kind of gives you an idea. That's an aggregate over a period of 20-something years. But when you break that down, it's been a very good investment, I think, overall.
Can you speak to the Association of Oregon Counties?
I cannot.
From a staff point on even Association of Oregon Counties and ONC counties in particular, when we're dealing especially with these secure rural schools bills, they provide us a lot of information and help us with forms and deadlines, and otherwise we would be spending a lot more staff time out there trying to figure out at the federal level where we don't have those contacts, and to figure out what we're getting, when we're getting it, when we're supposed to report something. So they do help, even me substantially in that.
That's very
And I'm
helpful.
sure other people too. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because as a citizen, I don't really understand what all of these different things do, so it's nice to hear that we're getting some real good return.
I would add that the ONC and the AOC, both of those organizations were instrumental in helping fund and also coordinate the effort of reauthorization of secure rural schools. The Association of Counties, Oregon Counties, pays a dues and helps fund National Forest Counties and schools. They help fund lobbyists back in D.C. Specifically for some of these renewal efforts. So, you could say that the most recent secure rural schools, both those organizations had a huge impact in getting that authorized.
One more question?
Well, not a question. I was going to respond to some of the question on Association of Oregon Counties. It's also where we get to interact with other counties about how they're solving problems. with the other 34, 35 counties in the state, and also where our staff gets training from. They provide training on various items. And what you can't see is not so much the money they bring in, but how much cost they prevent, because as an association, they do the majority of our lobbying in Salem. When Salem's looking at some unfunded mandate, they're the people that help us stop that. And I can't tell you how many millions of dollars they've probably saved us in unfunded mandates over the years. So, and that's half the time when I'm called up to Salem to testify, it's with AOC and working with them. They do a much better job as an association. I mean, Alex is one guy. They have a staff of, I think, 10 people that track bills, and keep track of everything that might impact counties. And it's really important that, we have that kind of association looking after counties' interests at the state level.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Human Resources.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marcia Edwards, and Human Resources Director. I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Inga Onrud, who's our Labor and Employee Relations Manager, Mary Miller, who's our Benefits and Wellness Manager, and Lizzie Cunningham, who's our Benefits Specialist and Budget Extraordinary. So I very much appreciate Lizzie today. She helped us out a lot. So we will have a handout kind of midway on the self-funding that we've been talking about, that you've been hearing about. So I'm just going to go through the slides, and then when we get to that point, we'll hand that out and certainly entertain any questions you might have. Okay, so I'm going to hit the strategic plan, do an overview of our services in HR, any changes we're making, successes we've had, constraints, initiatives, and what we're going to be doing moving forward. And as you'll see, we've got lots of plans moving forward. So this is our one-pager. Certainly under Safe and Healthy County, our employees are a large part of that. So our concern with their health and how we can help them improve their well-being is one of our number one goals. Under Vibrant Community, HR is very interested in reducing the carbon footprint by going more electronic with a lot of our processes. We move a lot of transactions through Human Resources, and unfortunately, many of them are paper-based. And so we want to do a better job of moving those electronically. So that's something, a theme you'll see today, and also something that we're going to be working on in the years to come. And under infrastructure, just one thing I wanted to point out is we're going to be going to a learning management system, and that really supports our employees' development and valuing those folks. Of the one? Yeah, we can get to that. Sure, I know. It's small. So here's some of the services that we provide in Human Resources. Classification, compensation, benefits administration, wellness initiatives, bargaining and administering, 7 collective bargaining agreements, grievance resolution, employee relations, training and development, recruitment and selection, performance management, and we run the Human Resource Information System. So, good news, no significant changes in HR's budget this year. We did do some movement of money so it would more accurately reflect how we're spending the money. And as you'll see, we've got some projects going, so that money was diverted to those projects. So here are some of the successes we had over the last year. In 2014, we offered 210 classes, which represented 5,575 hours of training and covered over 1,500 attendees. Now, this is only the classes generated out of Human Resources. Other classes are generated out of other departments and, of course, include a much larger number. We also partner with other agencies to offer mutually beneficial training. So, for instance, City of Eugene, eWeb, we invite them to some of ours. They invite us to some of theirs. So we're able to take advantage of that. In the last year, we also bargained 5 collective bargaining agreements, and of course, the continual administration of the full 7. We're currently in negotiations with 2 of our bargaining units. We opened over 300 recruitments. We have selected a new 457 administrator, which we'll talk a little bit more about. We've selected a new employee assistance provider, which we'll also touch on. And we processed proof of enrollments for over 500 Medicare retirees and coordinated an employee engagement survey. So this is one of the things that we've taken care of this year, that Mary is actually wrapping up the loose ends on in converting from Great West, who had the unfortunate, very recent name change to Empower. And so our employees had to get use of that, only to be transferred to TIAA-CREF. But this is all good news, because TIAA-CREF is going to be taking over June 1, and they're bringing us lower fees and enhanced transparency along with that. We're also going to be able to offer our employees a 401A. They currently have access to a 457, offering them 401A, which is where if an employee is currently getting county funds diverted to the 457, it will now go to the 401A. And that means there'll be more room in the 457 for employees to make the full contribution, which I think is currently $18,000 annually. And TIAA-CREF is also going to offer new financial planning services for our employees. So I, as an employee, can sit down with one of their financial planners, and they'll be able to talk to me not only about my 401A, 457, they'll be able to talk to me about Social Security, about PERS, about if I've got any other retirement funds anywhere else, and they'll be able to pull that package together and talk to me about how that's going to affect me in retirement. And the switch to a new employee assistance program is going to be effective July 1. We had a committee working on 9 proposals that were received, and they're going to be replacing Direction, who has been with us for many, many years. So they're able to serve us even so far out as Florence, so they can serve us all over the state. And they're also going to be providing enhanced services. So you see financial, legal issues, those are pretty standard. Elder care, child care, adoption, savings on purchases, which kind of perked up my ears. They offer a lot of training, wills and documents, also pet care and wellness. So, for instance,
What is pet care?
if you need to find a doggy daycare, if you need to find a pet sitter, if you need to find a veterinarian, they can help you with that. The example that Mary gave to me was that, if I've got a relative across the country and I need to make arrangements to get out to them, but I still have this little job thing that I have to do every day and go to, well, I can call Innova, and they will help me find that flight and make those arrangements. So it's kind of a concierge type of system. And I should also add that it comes at half the price of Direction. So, of course, here are some of the constraints and challenges that, we see going into the coming year and currently as we're moving through a lot of these projects. Ensuring certainly that employees are able to seek skill development opportunities and get away from their day-to-day jobs. Recruiting for specialized positions in the healthcare field, in IT. There's some very specialized positions. Continual bargaining. Seems like it's every year we're bargaining contracts, and currently with FAPO and our prosecuting attorneys. I'm sorry, FAPO is our parole and probation officers. And again, bargaining contracts in fiscal year 16-17 with Admin Pro, 626, and LCPOA. LCPOA being our Sheriff's Office employees. Let's see, ensuring also that we're in compliance with ACA requirements, which we'll again touch on a little bit more, and limiting the county's exposure to the employer's Cadillac tax. We're also going to be redesigning our new employee orientation in 2016. And, of course, balancing the staff workloads in HR as they are assigned to projects, and the other folks in HR are covered for those assigned to projects. So those are some of the challenges we're facing. So, on to initiatives. I mentioned briefly that we're going to be adopting a learning management system. And a learning management system is going to offer or allow us to offer classes online. So we'll be able to get them out to more employees. It's going to allow me as an employee to register for a class online. It's going to allow my supervisor to assign classes to me. And it's also going to allow my supervisor to work with me on my development and talk with me more readily about what's available, what are my goals, and how can we get me there. So, of course, the why is because, we want to make sure we're supporting our employees, and we want to make sure we're doing our best to give them what they need to better themselves and also help them with their development. So the win is, we've currently completed the RFP process, and right now we're evaluating those RFPs. We're down to the point where we're checking references, and those finalists will be asked to come in and do a demonstration for us, and that's going to be implemented this fall. Another project we're working on is online benefits enrollment, and the tool that we'll be using is Ben Admin, which is a piece of PeopleSoft. So we didn't have to buy any additional software to make this happen. This is an existing piece of PeopleSoft. So it's going to allow employees to kind of review what's available through their benefits, make those elections online. And the whys, again, we're trying to move away from these more manual processes. So this is one piece of that, certainly. It's a very paper-intensive, very manual-intensive process currently. So that is going to be this fall. We're going to be implementing with open enrollment. We're currently in a system configuration phase, and we'll be doing testing this summer. And performance management. So right now, the number of employees receiving an annual performance evaluation is too low. So in our current tool, what I'm hearing is, of course, you all may know that I'm very new to the county, having just arrived last June, but what I'm hearing from a 30-year employee is she doesn't remember ever seeing a different tool. So the tool we're currently using is outdated and not really goal-driven for the employees or helping the supervisors work with their employees to set those goals. So we did conduct some focus groups and get employee input as well as supervisor input on what would best meet their needs. And so we are currently in the process of developing that new tool. And some of our goals, of course, that it be more user-friendly, and that employees be able to participate in meaningful goal setting, and that all regular status employees receive an annual evaluation. That's the goal. So, a little bit about healthcare costs. This is a very scary but unfortunately realistic graph. So, we're looking at not only the rising cost of healthcare, but we're also looking at the looming Cadillac tax that will come to us in 2018. So let me just explain this chart a little bit. So what this demonstrates in the blue are current benefit costs, and what you'll see in that red bar is if the Cadillac tax was in place right now, which it is not, this is how much it would be costing. So if you move along to 2018, when it will be in effect, you're seeing an over $4 million hit to the county's budget. So, we've got some major challenges ahead of us for that, but there are some things we can do. And some of the...
I'm sorry, that red is that the fine that we would be imposed?
Yes.
Yes.
Doesn't buy us any benefits.
So some of the cost control measures that we're looking at, we have over 2,100 dependents enrolled in our benefit program, And so what we're going to be doing to make sure that we've got a clean slate, so to speak, is we're going to be doing a dependent eligibility audit, which means that any dependents that I have on the plan, I will need to provide proof that they are indeed my dependent. So we're going to ask all of our employees to provide that proof. I know, it's crazy. Just kind of an FYI, several years ago, we conducted the same type of audit, and we actually found around $500,000. So.
That's what we're using for definition of dependent, that internally, or is it matching state statute, or what are you doing?
Oh, absolutely. So, it could be
It's based on the
spouse,
on the policy.
child.
The insurance policy that we have is based on the definition there, but it doesn't show, and I can just copy what that is, it would include domestic partners, a spouse, a child who's adopted, a foster child, if there's a court order, obviously you don't show anything where you're a domestic partner or a spouse's children.
Can we please save our questions till the end?
Let's see, and just a note there in the middle, that our Live Well Committee, which has had a recent name change, but has been in effect for many years, is working on developing evidence-based programs that will provide, that will include wellness screenings, intervention, education, and activities. The research shows that the more involved I am in my health care, the more healthy I am, the more productive I am. So this is the bullet you've probably been hearing something about. We're going to be moving our health plans to a self-funded model. So we're currently a fully insured plan, and we are going to be moving to self-funding, which is a very exciting concept, perhaps a daunting concept for some. But we're lucky that Mary came to us with experience in self-funded plans, and I think she even has some information to share with you. Absolutely.
Sure. We've been getting lots of questions from committee, from commissioners, the public, employees about what's self-funding. Lane County has been fully insured for many, and I'm not sure if Lane County's ever been, so, no. Okay, all right. So this is a new concept for Lane County, not a new concept out in the world. Our neighboring cities are both, Eugene and Springfield are both self-funded. The city I came from in Kansas, self-funded. This is just a mechanism for paying for the claims we know we're going to incur with the 2,100 dependents and the 1,300 employees and retirees. So we have a claims expectation running around $22 million. So right now what we're doing is we're fully insured, which means we pay Pacific Source, who is our insurance company, about $2 million a month to pay for all those. That includes the administrative costs and paying for all those claims. What that does is means, in effect, we're paying for claims that we may or may not incur, and we're also paying for them in advance. We have had a program with Pacific Source over the past few years that actually, it's called a retro premium rating endorsement. So if our claims do not if they do not hit the premium level, we can receive a refund. So it isn't that we've totally been paying out money and not getting any type of return. We've actually received, $1 million plus in the past few years. So again, that's money though that we are paying and then getting back. We'd rather not pay it to begin with. We would rather pay for a self-funded model, which is we buy a stop loss, which says we're not going to pay for any claim over X amount. 200,000 is typically the level that organizations start with. They can also choose 250,000, 300,000. It's really what's your risk tolerance, what's your claims experience look like. So the first thing we do is to get into self-funding is that we probably going to work with Pacific Source. We're in negotiations with them right now, so I can't say it's definitely going to be them, but that is most likely the case. It would be called what's called an Administrative Services Only Agreement, an ASL, meaning that Pacific Source will process the claims, pay the claims, we'll use the Pacific Source network of providers. So to an employee, it will be very seamless. They won't see a difference in how their claims are handled. And I actually have a Q&A on that for employees. Some employees, again, haven't lived under this kind of a plan. And then what we'll do is we'll pay an administrative fee per employee every month, and then we'll start paying claims as they come in. And that, again, the claims will be adjudicated by Pacific Source. We will be told how much the claims were for that period, and then we will pay that. So what that does is it improves our cash flow immediately. Again, you look at a $2 million a month versus in August, we're not going to pay $2 million. We're going to pay a significantly reduced admin fee, stop loss, and then claims will take a while to come in, so we get the lag of the claims. Now, granted, after we've been in this for a while, things even out, but what it does is it gives us better data also. We get some aggregate data right now. It'll give us some better data, which is de-identified. We're not going to know whose bills are whose, but it will let us better target the wellness interventions we want to offer. We want to start doing some incentives, and also we're putting out an RFP on Monday for an on-site clinic for employees so that they can get on-site care. So that's kind of self-funding in a nutshell. I do have a really great handout from the Self-Insurance Education Foundation that it kind of breaks it down into why do employers choose it and who chooses it. I mean, Microsoft, labor unions, Whole Foods, governments. I mean, I've been in benefits probably for 25 years, and almost every plan I was in was self-insured because of the big organizations, and it's a big pool out there. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this out. What you'll see is the Q&A for employees, and I can walk through that, or I can just let you look at it, but this is something that, our employees value their health insurance because it's amazing, and it's something that it's just, we got to have health insurance in this day and age. Questions on that? So again, August 1 is the plan. We're working with a consultant that we've used for years. We'll be using actuaries because obviously we want to help predict get help to predict our claims and set up adequate reserves. So, big shift, but it's the right thing to do. Questions at the end?
Let's see, and this is my last slide, I promise. So, again, going forward, this is what we're going to be up to, generally speaking. Negotiating new and maintaining the ongoing collective bargaining agreements, moving the county to the self-insured model, opening an on-site employee wellness center, implementing a learning management system, redesigning the performance evaluation process, adopting online benefits enrollment, and we're also working on developing greater flexibility with our departments regarding the recruitment process. We're going to be utilizing employee survey results to develop an action plan to increase engagement. We're going to be analyzing our compensation structure to ensure pay is equitable and competitive. And we're going to be increasing wellness offerings, which align with the Affordable Care Act. So we got a few things going on, but we're up to the challenge. So
let's start around the room. Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I think that we're really moving in the right direction with this self-funded health insurance. I think that it was great that we got rid of the Great West deferred compensation. I attended the presentation that Tia Kraft gave. I think it's a much more comprehensive program, and also apparently is significant savings to us, so we get better service at a lower price. The one thing I was going to ask you about is, can you dispel the notion that this is all sort of feel-good for the employees, but it doesn't have any financial savings to the taxpayer? Things like gym pass, things like on-site medical care, telling me that an apple a day will keep the doctor away.
You're not believing that?
I haven't noticed any correlation between my apple consumption and my medical costs, no. Are they yes. So I'm just curious, it's good practice. I'm glad you're doing it. I'm all in favor of doing it, but I would like to dispel the notion that it is just making us feel good internally and not necessarily returning a return on investment to taxpayers.
Well, certainly with the opening that wellness center for employees, Mary, you can speak to that because you went through that experience in Olathe.
Yes. So Commissioner Sorensen always asks the multi-part questions, and I appreciate that. So let me try to answer all of it. In Olathe, Kansas, we did open a clinic in 2009. The first year we experienced an ROI of 3-to-1. And we thought, no, that's too good to be true. So we worked with Mercer, which is an international consulting firm, and they have a practice out of Chicago that their sole job is to analyze the ROI for on-site wellness clinics. And so we had them review the numbers, and they vetted them. They said, and it's soft costs, it's hard costs, but one of the main things that, first of all, we're offering a lower cost alternative to the health care that's provided in our community. We're also offering a way to get in and out quickly. We're offering a caregiver that will spend time with an employee versus the doctor that's overbooked and you're in and you're out. We're also offering opportunities, incentives to get well, to stay well, to be well. And this will actually trickle down into the family, which trickles down into the community. So that's a very powerful thing that these clinics do. Back to Olathe, the first year ROI was 3-to-1. The second year ROI was 5-to-1. The third year ROI was 6-to-1, and then I moved out here. So I'm not sure what it's doing now, but it was definitely in the right trend. It's a big market. There's lots going on. We have Springfield. I was a volunteer at the Marathon Packet Pickup on Saturday, and strangely enough, the woman next to me was the nurse practitioner for Springfield's clinic. And in this calendar year alone, they've already saved $50,000 by having the clinic, and mainly that was because of lab work. Lab work can get very expensive when folks are going out, to a doctor, and it can be $115 versus the clinic can sometimes do it for $15. So you figure everybody that needs, the lab work, they save lives. A lot of tests get done because they're talking to their provider that wouldn't otherwise, and so the PSA reveals early cancer that doesn't turn into expensive prostate. So there's lots of research on it, and I would love to provide more on that for you, but this is definitely the way to go.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. You want one in round 1? And then
Yes, please.
So a little bit sort of piggybacking, but not quite, the idea of on-site clinic. I think it's great, and I've heard lots about that, and I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes. So sort of on a similar but different vein, I know that for a lot of employees, affordable child care is a real issue and often a barrier to being successful at work. And I wondered if the county has any plans or has given any thought to workplace strategies or programs or supports to address child care supports for county employees. There are a lot of models for that as well. The federal government does it. Lots of other local governments do. Just knowing that, particularly you've been hearing from all the departments how recruitment and retention is a real challenge. And I know that just generally in the workforce, that's one of the greatest barriers. particularly when we want to diversify our workforce as people balancing caregiving responsibilities at home with work responsibilities. So I'm wondering if that's something that's been given any thought to.
Well, that's not something we're tackling this year.
Well, and not only just in necessarily providing, but, there are also a lot of policies that don't necessarily cost or cost very little. I don't know if you're familiar with United Way, the Columbia Valley, Columbia Willamette recently adopted a workplace policy where people can bring infants to work up to age 6 months or until they're crawling. And all they did was converted like one meeting room to a quiet room for napping and breastfeeding and so on. And it's just incredibly increased their attendance with their return to work new parents and general employee comfort and satisfaction and productivity. People aren't worrying about infants at home and don't have to pay that really expensive child care, which is infant care for the first few months. So there's some simple model policies out there that aren't necessarily straight up child care subsidies that I wonder if you would consider looking into.
As I said, we haven't talked about it doing anything this year, but, who knows what we'll be able to consider in the future.
Mr. Chair, we have 5 minutes left, 4 minutes now left on this item, if we're going to stay on schedule. I'm going to avoid hypothetical questions, which cause staff to go into details of things that aren't really particularly in this budget. The only thing I would like to say, Mark, is bravo to you, bravo to Mary, and bravo to Steve. A well-run HR department is a thing worth using. Well done.
Also, in the interest of time, just a very short question, hopefully a very short answer. What was the catalyst to self-insurance? Was it the budget gap, or was it just someone new coming along with the best practice kind of thing, or what was the, and then maybe for you, Steve, I don't know.
I think it was, Mr. Chair, it was a combination of things. Certainly, having a new benefits manager that has experience in implementing plans like this was critical. I think that the fact that the county had several years ago gone from 7 plans down to 2, that was a big leap that needed to happen. That put us in a better position, I think, to move in this direction. I can tell you, I've worked with prior employers that have worked with self-funding models, and there were hurdles in different places. I think there were a number of folks in our organization who felt like we were primed. We were the right size of organization in terms of the size of employee and size of claims. The cost, obviously we looked at the trend in the cost, the growing cost of health insurance, and that Cadillac cost, and feel the need to gain greater control. And again, that's our theme in our budget here, is local control, revenues and expenses. And this is a good example of gaining better control of one of the most significant expenses we have countywide. So I think there was an acknowledgement that this is something we need to get serious about tackling. And this is really the first step in that. You see the other pieces, the dependent audit, the wellness initiatives, and the other things that we're going to continue. We're going to have to look at the design of the plan. We're going to have to talk to our employees about the cost of the plan and the fact that there is no premium share. It's a free healthcare plan for everybody. So there's more work that we need to, that needs to happen. So I guess I would say it was a number of factors that all converged. The last thing is we have a reserve in place because of what Mary talked about. The rebates that we've got at the end of the year, we've been able to build up a health insurance reserve that puts us in a really good position to now take on a little bit more risk by self-funding those claims, so that if we ever go over that cost, we have that reserve that we can provide as a cushion.
Thank you.
Just that I'm very appreciative of we're looking at this self-insured plan. It's a former mayor of Springfield. I will tell you that many of the folks in Springfield brag about it. And I think it's a really good, by the way, going from 7 to 2 was a first initial good step. And I think you could bring that on at the time. I think this would have imploded pretty badly here, but I think just kind of these baby steps feel good. I didn't talk about this self-insured plan since they elected, so I think this is very good. Appreciate it.
What is the cost of the new on-site wellness center, and is it in the proposed budget?
It is in the budget. The cost, the RFP goes out on Monday. The request for proposal.
Right. But how can we have it in the budget if we don't know what the RFP is going to be?
Well, what we budgeted for is about $850,000. And that is based on, we'd spoken to a provider of clinics that's out of Oregon, and he gave us a number to use
that was, and again, that depends on the hours you're open, and it depends on, if there's any build out and those types of things, but that's where we came up with the money to put in the budget.
Okay, and so to clarify, 850,000 of general fund money? No, what is the resource is the county fund?
All county funds are paying into it the same way they would pay into an insurance plan.
Okay, so it's a line item that comes from the different divisions that,
It's showing up as,
thank you. That's what I mean.
it's always into general expense, yes.
Got it.
Commissioner Stewart?
For those of us who don't understand the Cadillac tax and the details, what are the characteristics of the benefit plans that the county currently has that trigger the Cadillac tax, and what's the difference between that and a threshold where there wouldn't be a Cadillac tax?
The Cadillac tax, the goal of that excise tax is to raise $80 billion over the next 10 years to fund the affordable care for all Americans. And what the goal is that to have high-value plans are going to be considered a luxury, and there's going to be an excise tax on it. And what makes a plan a high-value plan is low deductibles, low co-pays, rich coverage, and high contributions by an employer and less contributions by employees. So we have the Cadillac plan. I think the government would rather everybody had about a Chevy. And so the incentive is for organizations to kind of take down the benefit level so that there's more for everybody. Does that make sense?
It does. Just to follow up on it really quickly,
Yeah.
How does Lane County compare with other public entities, the city of Eugene, Springfield, as far as that benefit level?
I'd have to, the benefit, it really comes down to the plan design. I know Eugene does require a premium share. I really haven't looked at their plan design, though, so I'd have to get back to you on, what are their deductibles. Eugene doesn't offer a high deductible health plan. We do, so we've mitigated in that sense. Most of our Cadillac tax liability is going to be on the co-pay plan, the plan that has the lower deductibles and less out-of-pocket. So it's really moving up out-of-pocket is what's going to mitigate the Cadillac tax, and everybody in the country is dealing with this. So this is the pressure is on everyone to change plan design or figure out a way to transfer the cost to employees. I don't think anybody wants to transfer $4 million to employees, nor do we want to ship it off to the federal government when we can use it here.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Senator, can I ask my second question briefly? And if it's
We're
a
out of
long
time.
answer, they can do it since we have 20 minutes at the end of the meeting.
We're past the time. Unless,
Move 5 more minutes.
okay.
If the answer takes a
Well,
while,
I think
can take
what I
the
was going to
answer
look to
and
is, Steve is very sensitive to time. Perhaps you only get 5 minutes of your time.
I will yield 5 minutes.
Thank you. The analyzing compensation structure to ensure pay is competitive, I assume that's the county employees' pay relative to other organizations, but I wondered if any component of that is also analyzing the county's own hiring, promotion, hiring, pay structure, and just general compensation practices to ensure that within the county we have equitable compensation structure, particularly across gender and race and ethnicity with our employees.
So you're speaking more of equitable pay across the organization. So every time an employee is hired, that is looked at. The internal equity piece is looked at. How many years they might be bringing to the county of experience in relationship to other employees, male, female, how is that looking in regard to salaries? So that's kind of looked at on a continual basis.
Okay. Thank you very much. County Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. As Christine is pulling this up, And you can go to the second slide there. I'll do some introductions for you, for the folks who are here today. Hopefully you can see this. We have 4 divisions in the County Administration Department. First, Administration, and I'll introduce Brenda Poling, our Economic and Community Development Manager. This is George Russell, our Interim Director of Operations. So you see the Operations Division that includes capital projects, county clerk, and finance. You heard from Brian Craner earlier in the week. Brian oversees capital projects, so we're not going to cover that topic today. Mike Barnhart is our Finance Manager. Shanda Miller is our newest addition to Lane County. She's our new Internal Performance Auditor, and that's a position that reports to the Board of Commissioners. And we'll talk in a minute about that new function that's been reestablished. And then Cheryl Betchart is our County Clerk. We also have our Board and County Administration support. Many of you know Diana Jones and Jeff Kincaid. Of course, Christine Moody, our Budget and Financial Planning Manager, as well as Judy Williams and Sue Aaron in Budget Finance. Alex Tyler is not able to be here because he's doing hard work in Salem today, our Intergovernmental Relations Coordinator. And then we have a Public Information Office that is currently held through a contract with Funk Levis, and Amy Levis has served in that capacity for about the past 2 years. Okay, and then parole and probation. You also heard from Donovan Meyer, our parole and probation manager, on Tuesday, and so those between capital projects and parole and probation, we will not talk about those in detail today, but we'll cover the other areas. And to give you quickly the breakdown of revenue, and this is a complicated, you can sort of see here, it's an eclectic mix of functions that we have. Was that here? Yes, I know. I wanted to sort of reiterate the eclectic mix of operations that we have in county administration. And so we have certainly a countywide focus as well as managing some particular operational areas, internal services as well as some external services. So our revenue, and this is a reflection of the eclectic mix of services that we provide in county administration. About 41% state revenues, 38% administrative charges because of the administrative services, internal services that are provided, and then 12.5% dues and charges. And then our expenses are about 53% personnel, which is consistent with the general fund, about what the general fund is. And I can tell you from my prior experience, I've seen other organizations that have had upwards of 70 to 80% in personnel costs when they're service-based organizations. So I think we're certainly in the ballpark there. Materials and service and capital outlay. So the Board of Commissioners provides obviously policy direction, strategic oversight, and other significant actions. 3 positions that report to the Board of Commissioners: the County Administrator, County Counsel, and now our new Internal Performance Auditor position. We have Budget and Financial Planning, which provides obviously planning, analysis, strategies, and tracking, and is coordinating the countywide strategic plan efforts, which we have a renewed focus on both from a countywide perspective as well as in all of our departments. Hopefully you've noticed that each of our departments, including the elected offices, have reported to you on countywide or on department strategic plans that are consistent and complement the countywide strategic plan that the Board of Commissioners has adopted. We have a renewed focus in this area of budget and financial planning. We've added 2 new staff in Judy and Sue, and we'll be adding another position without an increase in cost. We've done some restructuring because this is an area that, it's my view, most of the challenges that we face in Wayne County are budget related in terms of our lack of resources that we collect and the need to manage effectively the expenses that we have, particularly our health insurance and other benefit costs. And so we want to make sure that we have the staff necessary to provide leadership and oversight, analysis, and support for those areas. Economic development supports the vibrant local economy, and you've heard the revenue that we collect in video lottery funds and transit room taxes. They're dedicated. These are dedicated revenues for investment in economic development and tourism-related activities. And so our staff, Glenda Bowling and Sarah Case, do a great job of working with our regional partners to make sure that we're coordinating our efforts and investing in the areas that have the greatest return on investment. And we'll talk in a minute about the renewed focus that Christine mentioned earlier on investing in public infrastructure projects that really spur positive economic activity locally. Intergovernmental relations, of course, works with our local and regional partners as well as with our state and federal agencies and representatives to make sure that we're pursuing legislative and policy initiatives that complement our strategic plan here locally. The law library is also a function that reports through intergovernmental relations. Our public information office is, hopefully you've seen some things that we've implemented in the past year, a real push to make sure that we are viewed and active in being open and transparent and responsive and providing information to the public and to our employees. We still have work to do. Certainly on that front, that will be a continual effort. I think we need to continue to improve certainly internal communications in many ways. I'll share with you that we're in the final stages of hiring a full-time public information officer, and we should be able in the next few weeks to announce that. So we have many plans for continually improving our information to our organization and to the public. Board and county administration supports provides administrative support to the board of county commissioners and the county administrator, as well as support to all of our departments in coordinating the actions that come before the board of commissioners at their public meetings each week and other activities. And George, do you want to provide a quick update? I'll hand over to George. George has served for the past 9 months here as our interim director of management, what used to be called management services and now is operations. And George is winding down his time here. I have done everything I can to try and keep him on board for as long as possible, but he earned a retirement. And so the challenge we have ahead of us is replacing the wonderful work that he has done in the past 9 months. So I'll turn it over just to share some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Budget Committee members. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to be very brief and kind of go at a high level, and we've got some key staff people here who, if you have some questions, can respond to those. As you can see, part of first let me say that what we now call operations is continuing to evolve, and what is now operations this year looked different last year and will probably look somewhat different next year. But it does include finances, and I assume most of you know what the financial kind of operations are, so I won't spend much time on those, but you can see it includes payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, investments, which is not mentioned up there, the typical kind of financial auditing and so forth. The second piece, and one that we did make some modification to this year, is the purchasing function, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the strategic plan. But in particular, I wanted to beef up the more centralized purchasing, and I'll talk about why on that in a few minutes when I get to that. So if we can move to the next slide. The next function is the county clerk, and most of you know what the county clerk functions are, but I want to say a couple of things, and it does include all those things up there, and there are 10 full-time employees and the county clerk who work in this area, and it includes all of the deeds and records kinds of things, but also elections. And there are some challenges that we look forward to next year. We expect to see some slight increase in revenue as a result of increase in recordings, marriage licenses, ceremonies that are going to be conducted out of deeds and records. But we also know that there's going to be a significant impact in terms of elections next year because of, one, the general election, two, the voter registration law that's passed, and because we in elections use a lot of extra help, it will mean constantly trying to increase the number of extra help people that we can use in that area. So we do expect to see some increased expenses as a result of the major general election next year. So So I wanted to, and you can't read this, but I wanted to highlight a couple of areas in particular that relate to what we call operations right now, at least, under the strategic plan. And there are a couple of areas that we see some responsibility for operations under county administration. The first one, under ensure access, equity and access, is that county administration operations will lead efforts to develop a framework for Lane County to address issues of human rights, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. That's kind of a new one. And then the second part under this, and this applies to the issue I mentioned about purchasing, is that county administration operations in the purchasing function will seek to increase and enhance opportunities and access to contracts and bidding for minority and women-owned businesses and disadvantaged business enterprises. And that's been an area where, at least my perception is, there's been a weakness over the past few years. And then lastly, of course, in the whole area of finance, maintaining a strong financial system to support countywide operations. So that's kind of the area that we're focusing on right now. And if you have some questions, we got some staff here who can respond to those.
And I would just add, as we mentioned at the budget presentation last Tuesday, that Lane County has, since 2009, been identified as a low-risk auditee from our external financial auditors, which is a good thing. It means that we have not had any major findings as a result of those audits over the past 5 or 6 years. We also have a AA3 bond rating, which is the fourth highest bond rating for Moody's Investment Services, and a reflection of very low credit risk. And these are reflections largely of our budget, financial planning, and financial management functions in Lane County. So credit to our staff there, and certainly our county clerk functions, the elections, deeds and records, management staff there just do outstanding work. And so I'll continue to just touch on the three strategic priorities that the board has established and what we're doing in the larger county administration department to support those areas. And I won't go into all of these, but our role in county administration really is to provide a countywide view, to represent the policies and direction of the Board of Commissioners from a countywide perspective. And so we're focused on federal and state funding, which is critical, stabilizing and reducing our expenses. We've talked a lot about today, engaging our residents in revenue options, particularly related to public safety funding in the future, coordination around the public safety district, evaluation study, advocacy for the Mental Health Reinvestment Act, support of the CHIP, you heard from Health and Human Services, and leadership on the Public Safety Coordinating Council. Under Vibrant Communities, the new South Willamette Economic Development Corporation, which just rolls off the tongue, SWEDCO, is the former Lane Metro Partnership, and this is our effort between Lane County, City of Eugene, City of Springfield, and the chambers and private business in our community to work together on a regional coordinated economic development effort to recruit and retain outstanding businesses. And three projects in particular that I'll touch on in a second, where we're looking to focus on public infrastructure investment in Glenwood, in Goshen, and in public market. We recognize those three projects. There's one in each urban area in Eugene and Springfield, and one in unincorporated Lane County. But the board has identified those three areas as critical priorities from a regional economic development standpoint, and so we're focused on those. Best management practices, focus on agriculture and outdoor recreation, and as George indicated, equity and access is a priority focus area for us. And then in infrastructure, we've been actively involved and will continue to be on working with our regional partners in pursuing a regional funding mechanism for road maintenance, developing a facilities plan, and the work that you heard from Brian Craner, both on the facilities plan and on the courthouse plan. So, major changes, and we can answer questions on this if the committee is interested, but just to reiterate that the board have had conversations with the board about shifting our focus from small grants for existing and relocating businesses for expansion and retention to really focusing the limited video lottery and transit room tax funds that we have, trying to have the biggest bang for the buck and investing in critical public infrastructure projects. So those three that I mentioned in Glenwood, Goshen, and a public market in downtown Eugene are our focus areas currently. A new tip hotline to report financial fraud. This is something that Shanda Miller, our internal performance auditor, Mike Barnhart, our finance manager, and Christine and others have been actively involved with, and we're in the final stages of launching. And new performance audits, and certainly Shanda's here to answer any questions on that, but we're looking forward to the reestablishment of the performance auditor position that the board has identified as a priority, and the number of performance audits that will occur annually and the work that will come there. And I think that the board has done a great job both in identifying the way in which to fill that position and selecting the individual to fill it, in making sure that it's a function that will be collaborative, that is going to, as some people have said, identify where things are being done right, and identify opportunities for improvement in a collaborative way, not a gotcha sort of way. So we're looking forward to moving forward with that effort. Some recent successes of the strategic plan. We've talked a lot about this, and of course, a strategic plan is as good as the paper that it's written on unless you use it on a daily basis to focus limited resources and staff on the areas that are of the highest priority to the board and to the community. And that's really what we've tried to do with this strategic plan. It's not revolutionary. It's pretty simple, frankly. A lot of these things had been identified previously and people knew were important, but it was critical that we get them written down and solidify the support for that, and that we continue to talk about it. So we come back with quarterly updates on the strategic plan. We've done quarterly, and we continue to do quarterly financial reports. And I'll say again, a really critical piece is we're starting to filter that strategic planning effort throughout all of our departments. It can't just be a county-wide effort at the board level. It needs to happen in all of our operating departments, and I think you're seeing that. A new 10-year public safety plan was also adopted by the board in 2014. We've, as I mentioned, tried to enhance, and we will continue to enhance internal and external communications, outreach with the public and with our employees, and there are a number of examples of that in the past year, and we will do more of that in the future. A number of new local partnerships. I mentioned the South Carolina Economic Development Corporation that is still getting off its feet. The work that we're doing with the City of Eugene, with LCC, the U of O, with the Farmers Market, and with other partners on a public market in downtown Eugene. The work we're doing on poverty and homelessness with Eugene and Springfield and other areas in the community, nonprofit organizations, to focus on solutions, collaborative partnerships, and identify solutions to those challenges, and then, of course, our regional road funding. The SRS funding extension certainly was a positive that we've been actively involved with. And our staff's been leaders on the Team Oregon food processing. The one, other than health care, the one area of the economy that continued to grow in the downturn of the economy. The new purchasing plan that's been developed, finance, and then an elections website update. We're also working on updating our county website, and that's a project that we're excited about launching and unveiling within the course of the next year. Constraints, you've heard a lot about recruitment and retention, and I'm not going to belabor that point other than we're focused on that not just from the county administration department, but really a county-wide perspective, that we understand there are constraints. We have a rather healthy benefit package, and in some cases we have wages that are less than market. So we need to address that issue, work with our employees under the financial constraints that exist, and try to identify solutions to control the costs, the growth of benefit costs that you've seen here today, but also give us the ability to recruit and retain outstanding talent that we have today and that we'd like to continue to bring into our organization. We expect some staff retirements and elections that will be a challenge, and as well as increased demand for central services because of decreased services in other departments. And then, of course, the uncertainty of federal funding will continue to be a challenge for us. And so, in conclusion, I feel like I've talked about this a lot, and maybe it's news to some folks, but again, it's important to reiterate. We're going to continue to focus on making sure that we have an outstanding team of leaders throughout our organization. I've been really impressed in the year that I've been here. And frankly, it's one of the reasons I came here, because I saw just a great team of staff that was dedicated to doing work. They come before the clock starts and they stay after the clock ends. And they're doing outstanding work under very challenging, in a very challenging environment of declining resources and less staff than we've had in the past, high stress levels. So our effort is going to be to continue to invest in that team of leaders. We're going to continue to look at our organizational structure, as George mentioned, both in county administration and in other areas, to identify opportunities for improvement and efficiency. You heard from Human Resources the focus on employee development, and we were really committed to those efforts in our department and throughout the county. Internal and external communications I've already talked about, and then financial and strategic planning. These are going to be themes that we'll talk about next year and the year after and the year after that and the year after that. And we will make progress and we will continue to improve in those areas. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, so can we get to quick questions? No. I have a reason for starting down there.
Quick question. A number of large employers in Eugene have a bus pass system whereby employees are walking to the bus, taking the bus, working, walking to the bus, taking the bus home, walking to home. Employers such as Lane Community College, City of Eugene, which I guess is now in the ESB, are doing this. Lane County's not doing this. Why isn't Lane County doing this? To save money.
Mr. Chair, so the question is, why are we not offering bus passes to employees? I think that's certainly something that we can look at, and the cost of doing that. But that's certainly something we can look at what the benefits and costs would be for that.
Yeah, it saves money on parking maintenance, and on employee health costs because they have to walk so much.
Sorry. Commissioner?
So this may be a question for Glenda real quickly, and that is, it's my understanding that, rain, not only rain, local rain, but state rain, not the weather, but seems to be is becoming more actively engaged with Lane County. And so obviously this is an opportunity where you're creating entrepreneurs, employers, taxpayers, expanding property tax. Can you maybe provide a quick update where we are as far as the engagement with RAIN, Pretty Labs, kind of these organizations, because it's pretty exciting.
Up to this point, we've been... So, as far as staff goes, and up to now, we've been associating with them, working with them in an advisory capacity. And a lot of that is because they are still in the early development stages, and so as they themselves have put it, we haven't quite figured out at what point our roles would be to assist them. Additionally, it's hard for us to determine what, if we're going to put a grant towards that, what that should be, or should we even do that. The state has funded them quite nicely. But, like Fertilab is an incubator, and then RAIN, after Fertilab incubates their businesses, the small entrepreneurial businesses, then they go into RAIN, and RAIN then accelerates those and then spins them out. I see our role a lot in the future as working with those businesses that get spun out of the accelerator, and how can we help them become successful and contributors to the economy.
But you're very engaged with them, is that correct?
Yes, we are engaged.
Very good.
What is RAIN?
Regional Acceleration and Innovation Network, and it's kind of a twofold entity. It works here in Eugene. The city of Eugene has actually found them a building, 942 Olive, I think, is Bill Bradford Building, and so they get to accelerate some of these incubated entrepreneurial businesses. There's also one at OSU. OSU got theirs off the ground a little bit sooner than we did here, but great program.
Okay. Is it Research Triangle, North Carolina? Research Triangle Green.
Good, good.
One quick question. You talk about the challenges in getting consistency across the purchasing in the departments. What kind of elements are now diverse, where some are doing it different than others? What are the differences in purchasing procedures right now that are not, that are a challenge to consolidate?
Like a lot of procedure, actually the APM is pretty strong on supporting NWB and disadvantaged businesses and veterans and so forth. But where it falls down is in the operationalization. When we cut out central purchasing about 4 years ago, we kind of started sliding in that area, and we're just trying to strengthen and bolster it back up to it gives the kind of support that we need.
Commissioner? So I got a couple on the card I'll submit, but under resources and state revenues, we just got the latest revenue forecast this morning, and of course, Ways and Means co-chairs had one set of proposals, the governor's budget had another, and seeing parole and probation is in county administration now. Does that reflect the high, medium, or low estimate of what the funding from the state's going to be? Because at least that's the way the PSDC is kind of starting to build their budget, is on a 3-tier. They don't know what they're getting.
I believe we took a rather conservative approach in our estimate of can we represent that funding, but if we didn't,
Sure. Yeah, we kept it flat in the budget, but I haven't seen the information this morning that came out yet. I'm going to look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll end with one comment that strikes me every year, that the outstanding nature of county administration, county staff, the management team, everything we do, I'm always impressed. And I try to reconcile that with election results out in rural Lane County, and I, for the life of me, don't know why there's such a difference. So, okay. Assessment and taxation. The most popular man in Lane County.
Chair, Commissioners, Budget Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present today. I will try to keep both items brief, but I'm sure there'll be questions after the presentation is over with. First thing I'm going to start out with is just, and everyone probably is aware of this, overview of our critical services, essentially what assessment taxation does. We are responsible for assessing and collecting taxes for all of Lane County, including special districts, and distributing those taxes to 83 tax districts, including Lane County. And it's quite a chore. By learning more and more of the processes over the last few years, I've focused mostly in my 20-some-odd years as on the appraisal side of the chore on the taxation side. So it is a fairly daunting task, and we do a very good job of what we do. We are responsible to collect not only for local governments, but for schools, special districts, and also for other essential public services, such as the new local option, or new 3-year-old local option for the Sheriff's Department. And that kind of moves into the next slide, which details out some of the different districts. 46% of the dollar collected by assessment taxation goes to school districts, 32% goes to local cities, 12% goes to Lane County. That was up from 9% previously before the local option passed. 4% goes to fire districts, 6% goes to other districts such as library, parks, water, urban renewal, and other districts.
It took only 45 minutes to go up into double digits.
Yeah. By the end of the presentation, it'll be at 20%.
Good job, Mike. Diamond 2 points.
So our 2015-16 proposed budget is fairly stable compared to prior years. As you can see, there's a little note here I wanted to point out in the corner. In 2012-13, we saw pretty significant losses in our department, and we're still reeling from those losses, not only from the customer service standpoint, but from the appraisal standpoint, and really every area of our department. All the employees have had to step up to cover these areas, to keep customer service hours that are at a bare minimum really right now, but it's because of the good staff that we have is how we've been able to maintain the services that we currently have. The staff is 46 FTE, budget of roughly $6.1 million. It's split between appraisal, and I won't read off all the positions, but bottom line, there's approximately 20 appraisal staff, and then administration. Administration is very light, myself and Krista Noble, and then property tax management makes up the difference. And we do a really good job of coming together as a team, and I'll go into that in just a little bit as far as one of the accomplishments, and also it's a future piece for this upcoming budget year. And this is a little hard to read, but you probably can, it's on the handout that'll be published to the internet, but this is the proposed budget as shown in our CAFA grant. For those of you who are not familiar with the CAFA grant, it originally was established with funds from recording fees that are collected by each county. Lane County is a donor county in that we receive back less dollars than we put into the fund. However, originally that CAFA grant was designed to fund 35 to 40% of assessment taxation's budget. And over the years, that's dropped and dropped and dropped. Last year it was around 17%. This year we projected about 15%. And that's due to many factors. This past year we looked at the amount of recordings that have occurred in 2014, and also low interest rates. It hopefully will stabilize unless the legislature does one of several things, either kicks back in $5 million that they swept out a few years back, or changes the formula for the CAFA grant, because the majority of the other funds do come out of the general fund. We do have some projects that we've been working on to help supplement the budget, but it's fairly minor. I thought about this for a while, the county's strategic plan and how assessment taxation fits into it. And the best analogy that I can use, we're the foundation for the strategic plan. Without assessment taxation, without the dollars that we collect, without the services that we provide, all the departments that have given their budget presentations last 2 weeks wouldn't have the funding except for state grants and other grants. We are very essential to make sure we do our work correctly and accurately and also timely. I'm going to go through a few of the major changes, and the first one is probably the most important out of all the major changes that I'm going to go through is the consolidation of assessment taxation to one level in the public service building, resulting in, I'm quite sure it will result in efficiencies and enhanced communication between staff. And I'm going to show a couple of diagrams here in a second, but assessment taxation I started in 91, and we've been historically really 2 or 3 distinct sections. We've been, at one time we consolidated a property tax and property records to property tax records, but appraisal and property tax have been physically located on 2 different levels, but also really 2 different cultures and 2 different management styles and 2 different, actually 2 entirely different processes for some areas. And by consolidating to one level, we're not only physically consolidating, but we're consolidating the processes, procedures, employees working together, watching the processes of each employee, looking for efficiencies. Efficiencies will come with the consolidation of our department. I'm going to skip forward just to show quickly, and this, I know it's really hard to read, but just so you get an idea of the consolidation, we're using existing space. The area that will see the most change is the front customer service area that will have more security and be more customer friendly. And then the area that's in the back here, to give reference, the cafeteria here and community conference room. This used to be Riz Ayers area, which is now vacated out. So this wall's being broken out, and we're moving back. Primarily, the appraisal staff will be in the back area, and in customer service administration. So we're really making a big move, and it's a big change for staff. And to make a move, as probably administration remembers, you have to kind of move around a couple times before you get there. And so we are going to be spending about 2 to 3 months, primarily property tax in a temporary area. Actually, I think it's just right below us, right here, our Children and Family Services area, and working on a working configuration that's going to allow us to remain in business, have normal customer service for the period of time, and have no downtime for the remodel and consolidation. So one of the second major changes is we're continuing with the District 1 pilot project with Southern Oregon counties. We received a little more additional funds actually from DAS and received an extension of the project to mid-2016. It originally was going to end in September of 2015. And it's been a so far very productive project. We're still finalizing the numbers as far as what has been sent out and what's been collected. But as far as tax dollars, it'll be a few years before the tax dollar amounts are realized, how much. But from the feedback information we have so far, it's been, again, very productive. Several projects that we started in 2013-14 and continued this current year will be discontinued. It was using temporary funding, primarily through LAPS, that was rolled forward. The projects include sketching of properties to make them available online, scanning of documents, machinery and equipment appraisals, and those special projects that are being discontinued, the effect of them is perpetual, and the taxpayers have definitely noticed the enhanced information that's online right now. So not only that is that our call volume has dropped down every year, and the internet usage, web usage has increased every year. Our counter visits have decreased every year, and also, again, the internet usage. So the more information we can push to the internet, the better customer service we can provide, and also be more cost effective and efficient. We did implement a service recapture charge, roughly is a $100 charge for applications for farm and forest and for special assessments, exemptions, excluding veterans and a few other exemptions. And that's not going to collect a huge amount of money. I think it's right around $12,000, somewhere around there. But those funds will be used to enhance the auditing function of programs that really haven't been looked at a lot in the past. The farm forest and the exemptions, we do send out questionnaires and exemptions. We have done limited desk audits, but it will allow us to do more and more audits of the exempt accounts and farm forest, which is very important because every exemption that's given out, every special assessment and deferral is loss of tax dollars for taxing districts in the county. Some more recent successes. We certified $464.6 million tax roll this prior year. We achieved 100% of real market value on the tax roll. All November payments were processed by November 28th. And that's the majority of the payments. That's a big feat. We send out approximately 175,000 tax statements, and that's done through a combination of several methods, through the lockbox service, through payments in our drop boxes, through payments in the counter, through payments online. But that's quite a bit of funds and customer contact within a very short period of time. And then again, the customer public information, we had approximately 23,000 customers via telephone or in person for 2014. Still a lot, but it's dropping and again moving to the internet. We are responsible for processing name changes and deeds, primarily for keeping accurate ownership records in the tax roll, and also for doing the annual ratio study. Some other recent successes, we have optimized and worked with information services using the application to calculate disqualified special assessment properties, where it used to take hours to calculate disqualification. Now it takes literally less than a few minutes to calculate. We completed a first stage of machinery and equipment tracking and depreciation for making sure that we have accurate tax rolls. And when a large manufacturer calls in and wants to know what assets we are taxing, we are beginning to maintain a much more accurate tax roll than we have in the past for those assets. For sales data, we have implemented a coding process where instead of hand coding a lot of the transactions, now they're automatically coded based on certain rules and when they transfer over from our taxation side to our appraisal side. And we've also done significant automation with electronic documents, including paperless seg merge process, Board of Property Tax Appeals, which is primarily paperless, and which saves resources all around. And let's see, one also a big piece is this past year we've done a lot of work on a new assessment taxation strategic plan. And it's really important. The last plan that we had ended in 2010, and the new plan focuses on several different aspects, including customer service. It focuses on reviewing all the business processes to make sure that they're efficient, and we're using our resources the best way possible. It focuses on the employees, their health and wellness, and also their career development. So those are very important aspects of our new plan for the next 4 to 5 years. As I indicated before, CAFA funds are down significantly over the last few years, but I hope that I'm quite sure they will stabilize out, but we're still at a low level. 15 to 17% is really low. We are starting to build a reserve for our software system that we converted back in 1998-99, and it's beginning to see the end of its life. So we're starting to build a reserve fund for that project. We're seeing retirements. We saw retirements on the appraisal side. We're going to start to see retirements on the property tax record side over the next few years. And we're losing a lot of legacy staff that have a lot of good knowledge and are very efficient at their jobs. One item also is that due to the cuts that we did in 2012-13, the Oregon Department of Revenue is closely monitoring us, where we're operating at the bare bones for work that we do. We're really not able to do physical reappraisal besides looking at sales of properties and for building permits. When I started, we used to do the 6-year reappraisal cycle, and that was required by statute. And that, when Measure 50 and 47 passed, that was kind of done away with. And so a lot of our properties, particularly in the South Lane area, haven't been looked at for 20-some-odd years. And that results in inequities in taxes and values that it makes it harder to appraise from the office using our annual ratio study. Some other constraints, the additional personal property work that we are doing with District Number 1, it's resulting in a lot of new accounts. So we have to process those accounts, and we don't have any funding to process those accounts. So we're putting them in the system and doing our best, but we'll do what we can. And as the economy improves, and it has been, the building permits are upticking, segregations are upticking, and that is adding increased workload and pressure to staff. Let's see. Obviously, we have some fairly significant appeals that take our resources and new laws. Legislature has been very busy this past year, and they aren't done yet, so we'll see what happens. Let's see, we talked about the strategic plan, and so bottom line is we are looking at continuing to appraise, collect, and distribute property tax dollars with the highest integrity and most accuracy that we can under the constraints that we do have. about it. So I guess I'll open it for questions.
Okay. Should we start around the table again?
Just want to state, emphasize to Mike, something I've told you in private, the job you're doing since you were appointed in the system, I really like it, is outstanding. That you're reconfiguring of the department for efficiency and for employee morale. I think by all accounts, several things are really going on.
Thank you.
No questions here?
Just real quick, Mike, on the multi-county coalition. Are you seeing any sort of savings at all, or is it really just not necessarily savings, but is it more of an efficiency type of?
It's more of, I look at it more as a kickstart, especially for personal property, where it's been self-reporting system for the past, as long as I can remember. And a very typical call that we get when a business gets a personal property return that hasn't been reporting is, I didn't know I had to file this. And so we're getting and responding to a lot of those calls. So the efficiency is that right now we're doing consolidated work for 3 of the counties, Coos, Curry, and Klamath, with our staff downstairs. We're also, with efficiencies, we're sending commercial staff to training in a few months with all the 7 counties, District 1 plus Klamath County, and to provide much-needed training to some of our new commercial staff. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, and I really appreciate the work you're doing on it, because not only are you our assessor, you're kind of the person who's running that operation too, and I know you're getting help from the other assessors as well, but I really appreciate your leadership, and in particular with some of these other counties that are really, really struggling, and I think it shows just a great sign. So thank you for the job you're doing.
Thank you, and I also wanted just to make sure and thank the management team and staff, because without the management team and staff, none of us would be able to get taken care of.
Well, for 24 years now, Mike, good job.
I always have a question or two, but probably, I've got 2 questions, but I'll ask the big one first. In the budget book, your total resources are $1.5 million, your total requirements is $6.1. How is that possible? And you're repeating that year after year. There's something missing in the budget book and resources. Is it the general fund contribution to A&T that's missing from the book? Page 73.
It's the discretionary general fund, and you'll see that in any department that receives the discretionary general fund. They don't balance. We don't transfer it over. The fund as a whole balances. So we don't transfer it.
Okay, because it was a glaring hole when you instructed us over and over again that resources and requirements must balance. So, I don't know, I've seen everyone pass the first time. Can I ask my second question?
Yeah, no, we're okay with that.
Okay. State revenues dropped by $400,000. One of them was that $251,900 grant. I assume that was just a grant that was used and done.
It was a one-time grant. However, since we were very frugal with those funds, actually we used I believe less than half of that. So that's the reason why we've been able to extend the district fund project for an additional year. The other additional drop is the estimated roughly 2% drop in the CAFA state funding.
2%, but it's $172,000 out of 1.2. That's more than 2%. So it's actually like about a 14% drop.
I'd have to double check
according to the way the book is. And is that based on the co-chair's budget that you have that drop, or what's the?
Well, the drop between the 2 years as far as the state's funds again would be the 252, and then the prior year's CAFA, which was actually downward adjusted from the budgeted amount to the estimate of this year's CAFA grant. So I could relook at the math, but I believe that the numbers that we used for the CAFA percentage for reimbursement last year was around 17%. This year is at 15%. So a little more than 2% mathematically if you calculate the difference between the two.
As a percent of your total budget, I'm talking about percent of the previous year's CAFA grant. From year to year, the actual CAFA dollar amount from Department of Revenue has gone down about 14% from what they're projecting.
Additional component of that is that we leveraged the 252 because we received CAFA funding on top of that. So we received the 15% on top of the 252. We were able to submit that in time to include in our budget I wouldn't say pad, but to bump up our budget to receive more CAFA funds.
And that you're looking at 2 different years of expenditure numbers. So it's not staying steady. Your expenditure, the percentage is changing and your expenditures are changing year to year. So you're not going to get a direct, exact 2% change when you're looking.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
What I'm looking at is the resource accounts, Department of Revenue. Last year was 1.207938. This year's 1,035,000, which is a decrease of 14.32%. I'm assuming that's the CAFA grant coming in.
Are you on page 75 where you're looking at the detail?
Yes. So with that drop, is that a 14% drop from the state in our assessment taxation assistance grant that we get from the state? Am I accurate in reading the budget document?
So, again, if you look at the 2013-14 actual, it was at 1.1, and then it bumped up to the 1.2, even though the percentage went down. It's because of the percentage bump from the District 1 project went up. And then taking out that District 1 project bump and then adjusting it downward to 15% reimbursement of our total expenditures. That was the result of the proposed number for 2015-16.
Let me try one more time. I'm not caring about what percentage the CAFA grant is of our total assessment taxation expenditures. I'm caring about the year-over-year change in the dollar amount of the CAFA grant. Did the dollar amount of the CAFA grant from last fiscal year to this fiscal year drop by 14%?
Well,
or at least estimated from last
it would
fiscal year.
It would be estimated, but the grant dollars, again, with the constraints of District 1, with the constraints of the bump, that component, and also the constraints of, since the cap is based on our budget, it's a percentage of our budget, plus some other components, that is a drop of, as shown on the sheet.
There was just a temporary increase in 14-15 because of that grant, is what he's saying. Because we received the grant in 14-15, it goes up
Okay,
to
so
1.2, so it's going down, but some of it's because of
the grant was added to our total budget, and we got the CAFA based on partially on that grant.
Correct.
What you're saying.
Correct.
So there's a little bit of that there. But going back to 13-14, then there's still a drop from 13-14 when we didn't have that grant at all. So we're still seeing a net drop in our CAFA grant. Does that mean we actually are spending less money overall on the county side and assessment taxation compared to 13-14? Just, looking at the requirements, we're actually almost over 500,000 more than 13-14 proposed at 15-16. It's a
looking
point.
actuals to budget. So it won't be exactly that total amount that will be spent of the budget in 15-16. But yes, costs are increasing.
But costs are increasing and revenue is decreasing from the state.
Yeah. What I was trying to highlight here overall is not only is, we're getting this constantly erosion of how much the CAFA pays for total percentage-wise, there is actually a net reduction in what the state is giving us this year, even though they're getting billions of dollars more in tax revenue this biennium. So I just, wanted to try and make that clear. I tried to get to it, but it wasn't quite getting there, but thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, we are out of time. Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate it. We are now on committee business until 5 o'clock. I would highly recommend we get up and stretch our legs for 5 minutes, and then we'll hit the discussion of next week's meeting. Okay? So we are adjourned for 5 minutes.
No, he said adjourn, I'm out of here.
Business is to discuss the system for next Thursday's meeting. There is no meeting on Tuesday. We are anxiously awaiting the election results. So to review, you have until noon on Wednesday to send any ads, proposals, thoughts, concrete adjustments to the budget. Okay? Those go to Christine by noon. Shortly thereafter, I suspect the collection will be sent to all of us. So by 5 o'clock Wednesday. Okay.
Looked at my calendar.
Well,
Not 5 in the next morning, but yes,
Okay.
I'll shoot for the end of that day.
Okay. We will have that list. We will then review that list, and if there are 4 votes to support that issue, that idea, whatever it may be, it will go then to round 2. Okay? If there are not 4 votes, it will be tabled, and that will be the end of it. We will then discuss those items that have made it to the second round. We will need 6 votes to include it in the approved budget. There will be an H&HS technical adjustment for the new community health center that we'll address at that point. There will be other technical adjustments, perhaps. We will have then a lengthy discussion. Well, if we voted 6 to put it in the budget, the discussion after that is going to be very limited. There'll be very little to discuss if it's in the budget. We will congratulate the people that weren't involved, forget the people that did the hard work, or something. There's an expression to that effect. And then we will either motions, not technical, but the statutory motions to approve the tax rates and so on and so forth. And then we will adjourn at approximately 8:45, if possible. If we are not able to conclude the budget process, we do have a meeting scheduled following Tuesday. If not, noticed.
Have another meeting scheduled at this time. The plan is for that evening. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if we ran late into the wee hours, the committee can always.
Okay. And we have time for notices and that sort of thing, so if necessary. But I agree, I don't anticipate the second meeting. Okay? Anybody have thoughts or issues with what I've just discussed on this page? Commissioner Swanson?
No.
I recall last year the motions to approve, there was verbiage up on a PowerPoint. Will we have those in advance as well? And if so, by when would you?
We can do them anytime. They're done now, really. Yeah. This is great statutory.
Commissioner Park?
No.
No?
So the details on the technical adjustments, the ones that are already known and so forth, have we got those yet?
No, we have not received them from the department, so they'll be, working on them. So we'll have them, hopefully I can send out most of that when I send out the list, right? We'll know it by Wednesday night.
Okay, very good, thank you.
One second. Commissioner Farley, we are reviewing the process of this page. I'll come back to you if you have questions. Go ahead.
So, as in the past, if somebody has an add back or whatever, it has to have either a takeaway or a place they're getting money. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear about that. You know, we have one new budget committee member, but that's been the process. We're going to propose new spending that it needs to either be balanced by cuts or by what reserve you're taking revenue out of or whatever. So.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Farley?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, so that will be our process for next Thursday. Please remember the deadline. And do we have any other committee business?
So, I guess I have some things that I'd like to put out. Hopefully, we have time.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
maybe a chance for that?
Any business?
Yeah. Okay. Speak up.
Okay. Committee. Actually, I would like to remind folks that there was actually a submission for funding from the Water Master, and we've dealt with this over the years and so forth. And one of the things of interest to me is that this is an interesting water year in general, and I think there's more value for the residents of Lane County to make sure that the Water Master has appropriate support in one format or another in order to deal with things over this budget period. So I guess I'm interested in that. I haven't figured out where to get the money from yet, but I am interested in that thing. So,
just, I don't want to get into deliberations, but just to remember the Water Master is a state government position and is funded through the state of Oregon because all water rates are adjudicated by the state. They're under state authority, and just so you know.
Okay. Christine, would you care to comment for a minute? In years past, the reserve has been a target of many of the acts. Is there any reserve money that you feel could be on the table this year, or would we be in violation of county policy?
It would be a violation of county policy. We're right at the 10%.
General funds.
General funds, right. Yes.
So that wellhead's right up. Okay. So to speak.
Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
Don't we ask you the last question? Is this just open or do I need to ask?
I think, let's just open it up.
Okay.
We've got time.
So I have a question. I know there's the goal or there's the mandate about using one-time revenue for one-time funds, hence the debt service allocation. Is that a recommendation or is it a mandate, something that we have to do?
That is the Board of Commissioners policy.
Okay.
It's not a mandate from the state or anything like that.
But it is a Lane County policy?
Lane County financial policy.
I didn't know if it was like guideline or policy.
Yeah, it's also recommended by the GFOA, or just financial.
And the
stability
GFOA
models,
is?
Government Financial Officers Association. They're the ones that give us the award for the budget and also the CAFR. So they put out those guidelines for financial policies in particular. Right.
Just asking.
Anybody, so if we have time, speak now or speak by noon Wednesday. And as I earlier spoke with Steve and Christine, the results of the election on Tuesday, there is a plan in place no matter which way it goes. So it won't be open season if it passes. It won't be, nothing will be removed if it fails. We have a plan in place. Still subject to discussion, I assume. But we are well prepared to handle either contingency. Okay. Going once? Twice?
Actually, when it passes, I think much of what we do with the money is pretty well mandated by the terms of its passage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But in terms of budget process and figuring out what do we do now, it's that, I didn't know we could say that when it passes, but if we can say when it passes,
Those of us who have
The glass half full, folks.
Okay. Last call. We're adjourned.
All right.